Look, memory can change the shape of a room, it can change the color of a car. And memories can be distorted. They're just an interpretation, they're not a record. And they're irrelevant if you have the facts.
Someone wants me. Someone roaming the streets wants me.
Your car's uglier than I am. That didn't come out right.
It's the Al Travis Show. We've got him, John Hinderaker, president, of course, of the American Experiment. We'd love having him on the program. Lots to talk about here in the state of Minnesota, but if you don't mind if we start, on the national level. I don't know if you could have known ahead of time that the Charlie Kirk assassination would still be having such momentum a week later. Usually in the world, terrible, it's bad, you talk about it 2-3 days, and everybody kind of moves on. This Charlie Kirk assassination has some stickiness to it. There seems to be something growing here, John. Your thoughts on Charlie Kirk?
Well, you're absolutely right, Al. I mean, we see this, we saw the mass shooting at Annunciation, and that was rapidly followed by the stabbing murder of that Ukrainian girl on the train in Charlotte. And then just a matter of days later, we had the murder of Charlie Kirk by Tyler Robinson. And these things, typically what happens is one of these things will happen and then whoops, it's off the front pages because something else happened, And so far, at least, that doesn't seem to be happening. The murder of Charlie Kirk continues to reverberate. It continues to have consequences. And one of the things going on, of course, is that large numbers of liberals are celebrating Kirk's murder. And I think that has shocked a lot of people. I mean, we're not talking about 5 or 6 people. We're talking about thousands and thousands of people who have openly on social media celebrated the murder of Charlie Kirk. And I think that has been shocking to a lot of people. Just yesterday, we saw the announcement that Jimmy Kimmel's television show is being suspended. I don't think it's probably ever going to come back because of just bizarre comments that he made as a left-winger about the Charlie Kirk murder. So, and I think that's one of the reasons why it is reverberating so much and continues to reverberate. And I think that's not going to stop tomorrow. I think it's going to continue to go on.
Give me your thoughts on the freedom of speech. I mean, they were talking about Charlie Kirk got killed because of his freedom of speech, his ability to say what he wanted to say. It drove some people crazy. These folks that post the videos, John, I'm too old for this crap. When I get a bad feeling, a good feeling, the first thing I think is done, they go grab my phone and videotape me celebrating. But people do it. But should they be fired for it? And it does depend maybe on the job. I'm having a weird time with it because I'm a big freedom of speech guy. But if the receptionist at my dentist's office is out there doing stuff like that, I might choose a new dentist, so dentists might have to take care of, you know what I'm saying? I get both sides.
Charlie, as long as the employer is a private entity and not the government, right? Yeah. Which is what we're talking about here, I think. It's up to the employer. And I think an employer can judge whether having somebody who works for him and to some degree represents his company out there doing appalling things on social media. If an employer thinks, look, that's going to hurt my reputation, he can and he may well choose to fire that employee. On the other hand, some employers will say, my customers are never going to find out about it, or I agree with him, or whatever, and choose not to fire him. And that is really a decision. If you're in the private sector, that is up to the employer. And I will say this, though. What about teachers? I mean, one of the things we've seen is that a large number of teachers and college professors are included in these thousands and thousands of people celebrating Charlie Kirk's murder. Now, if I had a kid in the 5th grade and I saw that his 5th grade teacher was pro-assassination, I think I'd be making some phone calls to that school.
But it's back to, do they lose their job for such things? Or you just say, I don't want my little Johnny with Miss Nancy because she's that. I want her with another 5th. It's just tough for me because maybe the line of work I'm in and what you do, we're held accountable. But, I mean, the Kimmel thing, you want to make your $22 million a year, there's some things you can't cross, some lines, and he did. You lose your money.
Well, his ratings were even lower than Stephen Colbert's.
Yeah.
And we know that Colbert was losing about $40 million a year for what was it, CBS.
Yeah.
And my guess is that ABC was pretty glad to have an opportunity to turn that money losing spigot off.
Oh,
And, it
that's funny.
started with Nexstar, which has, I think, around 200 television stations. Nexstar, they went first. They said, hey, we're appalled by this. Our stations are not going to play that show. We're going to replace it with other programming. And then that may be what prompted ABC to do the same.
News here in the state of Minnesota. I don't know how this is even news, but he finally said I'm in. The governor decided he would get in the game. We've been talking about this for weeks upon weeks upon weeks. I don't think it's a news item that is in, but I find interesting about it is he was, him and Haw, and I said, hey, if you want to be governor, at least show me you really want it. Let's get it, yay, I'm in. Didn't get that. He releases his video and then says, oh, by the way, we raised $1 million, which he had in the can, obviously, but did not even stage an event. It wasn't worth getting a group together and getting the press together. It was the most lackluster I'm in of all time. How do you think he's sitting with Minnesotans right now?
Well, that's a good question. I think one of the things going on in the phenomenon you just noted is that I think the DFL has come to rely so much on their money advantage that they don't think much about anything else. I think Tim Walz is sitting there thinking, I don't need to do an event. I don't need to go around,
Shaking hands, kissing
beans at the
babies.
Union Hall. I'm going to outspend my Republican opponent probably by 5-1, right? As I have in the past.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why he's kind of lackluster in how he goes about the campaign. But Walz has got some serious problems, and fraud is probably number one on that list. And it's not the only one, but let's start there because our organization polls every quarter, as you know, for our magazine Thinking Minnesota, and we polled Minnesotans' attitudes toward fraud, and the results are going to be in the October issue of our magazine, but we released some of them a couple of days ago. And what we find is that 50% of Minnesotans generally say that fraud is going to be a major issue for them when they go to the polls next November. And 56% say that Tim Walz has not done enough to combat fraud. And what's even worse for that is that in the suburbs, which, as you know, tend to be the swing areas, the critical areas in Minnesota elections, suburban residents, 70% said that fraud is a major issue to them, and 61% of suburbanites don't think that Tim Walz has done enough to prevent fraud. So those are pretty terrible numbers for somebody who's talking about running for a third term.
And when it hasn't gotten probably the press that it deserves. I mean, we've heard about the fraud, but then it goes away the next day because another fraud case is up. I think if somebody running against him just starts plastering that in, that's going to cement in people's heads. Today, I found it today on AmericanExperiment.org. The first ever fraud firing. Somebody in the state government got fired yesterday for not doing his job when it came to fraud. Isn't that interesting? The day after he decides he's going to get back in and fraud's the number one thing. Oh, we better fire somebody. Is that a quick
one guy?
Yeah.
After $1 billion have been stolen from taxpayers in the state.
And 7 years.
After 6.5 years, let's fire one guy. It's kind of funny, in his video, Tim Walz said that in his third term, he's going to really crack down on fraud. It's like, well, gosh, Governor, why wait? Why wait?
Pick up the battle right now. And the weird thing about that guy is he is supposed to testify in front of some committee with Kristen Robbins, who's running against him, but he got fired, didn't need to show up. Coincidence? Do you believe in coincidence? That just seems so strange to me. A guy got fired the day he gets back in.
Well, in the context of no one having been fired for any of these frauds that have taken place for the last 6.5 years. So finally, our governor bestirs himself to actually start taking some action. So we'll see what the voters think about that.
All right. Well, Doug, I don't know what all you polled on, but we got to go to break. Coming back, I want to talk about the guns because we're having a hearing with a bunch of folks left and right to discuss whether they can find some common ground so that then the governor can call a special session. We'll talk about that coming up here in a moment with John Hinderaker.
Think about it. A famous politician once said, "You're entitled to your opinion, but you are not entitled to your own facts." But in a world full of AI and fake news, where can Minnesotans find the facts? Center of the American Experiment is Minnesota's go-to source for fact-based analysis and common sense solutions for taxes, energy, public safety, and our kids' education. Visit AmericanExperiment.org for more information. Think About It is brought to you by Center of the American Experiment, Minnesota's think tank.
Achieving your financial goals requires individual planning and a comprehensive approach. At Midwest Money Management, our mission is to provide you with the knowledge, tools, and confidence to feel comfortable financially today and secure about tomorrow. Learn more at MidwestMoneyManagement.com. That's MidwestMoneyManagement.com.
Securities offered through JW Cole Financial Inc., member FINRA and SIPC. Advisory services offered through JW Cole Advisors Inc., Midwest Money Management, and JW Cole Financial Inc. and JW Cole Advisors Inc. are unaffiliated entities.
As in alligator. L also in alligator. But it's not alligator. It's the Al Travis Show.
And we've got him, John Hinderaker, president of American Experiment. Love talking with him on the program. Sir, of course, all the shootings going on here in Minnesota, the Charlie Kirk shooting, obviously things are whooped up. They've got a committee getting together to discuss, at least yesterday, all these different proposals they might want to try to get passed for gun legislation. And I presume if they get something figured out, then they can call a special session. Well, the Pioneer Press asked Ron Latz, would you bring 200 and some lawmakers together if you can't get any meaningful stuff done? He goes, we still want to get people on the record. Sir, is there anybody we don't know where they stand on gun legislation? I mean, you can go down the list, Democrat this, Republican that, you can tell where they stand. Is there any shockers here, or is it just theater?
Well, I don't think there's any shockers, Al, but there are some Democrats in the legislature who do not want to vote for more gun legislation, who do not want to vote to ban certain categories of firearms and so on, because they'll lose their next election. If you're running in Edina, you can do that. But there are Democrats who will not vote for that legislation. So I think what we're seeing here on the part of Governor Walz when he says, we're going to call a special session, we're going to legislate on guns, I think in large part that's bluff, because there are Democrats who are saying, don't do that to me. I won't vote for the kind of legislation that you're talking about. So, and the Democrats had their famous trifecta in 2023. They could have passed anything they wanted on firearms. What they passed was the red flag law, the purpose of which ostensibly is to prevent mentally disturbed individuals from maintaining access to firearms. And of course, the ink's barely dry before you have Robin Westman, who's about as disturbed as you can get, shooting up an elementary school. So that didn't work, and so now it's, I guess, back to the drawing board.
Have we ever had a piece of legislation that worked when we voted it in while we're still up in arms and emotional about everything? I don't remember a really good piece of legislation going by. One of them wanted to try is letting municipalities decide the law of the land in their city. And Richard Draham, according to this post, said, we can't do that. What are you talking about? That if Al's okay in his city to carry his gun, but goes down to the next city and goes past City Hall, he can get arrested? We almost have to have a universal thing across this country, don't we, at some point? Minnesota can't have every city have a different rule.
Well, you can't have every city with a different rule, but Al, I'll point out that there's kind of a famous case. There are areas in the northeastern United States where you actually cross state lines going from one suburb to another suburb. You're driving 12 miles, but you might be in 3 states. And a woman who's driving along, who's got possession of a handgun, perfectly legal in the state where she lives, is taking one of these 10-mile drives to some nearby suburb that happens to be in a different state, and she gets stopped for something, and she gets a serious firearms charge. But at a minimum, we certainly need uniformity within the state. The uniformity, to the extent that there is uniformity, and there are, probably thousands of gun laws across the country if you tried to count them all. Any uniformity that we have really comes from the Supreme Court, which establishes minimums. In other words, the Second Amendment does not allow you to ban handguns, for example.
All right. One last topic before we go, because I don't even understand anything about why this would work. Hennepin County's Moriarty, the attorney Moriarty, came out on purpose, for whatever reason, just want to let the world know they're going to limit felony charges on low-level traffic stops. You got a car full of coke, you got a headlight that's out, they pull you over, we're going to let you go because, it was just a headlight thing anyway, don't worry about the coke. First off, if you believe that, just go ahead and do that. Don't charge them. But why would you have a news conference to tell bad guys, hey, don't worry about driving the speed limit, don't worry about your lights? What possibly good can come from this?
Well, Mary Moriarty is pro-crime. I don't think there's any other way to put it, Al. She ran really as a pro-crime candidate, and she has been true to her word. She really doesn't like to charge criminals for anything. And, David Zimmer, our public safety policy fellow, did some research, wrote a wonderful piece about this. We got tougher carjacking laws, but 80% of our carjackings happen in Hennepin County, and she won't charge them. This is of a piece with everything that Mary Moriarty has done. And anybody in law enforcement, Al, will tell you that if you have a car that is, the vehicle is speeding, it doesn't have proper lights, it doesn't have license tabs, the likelihood that the driver of that car or the people in that car are engaging in some other criminal behavior is exponentially higher. And a lot of criminals get caught, just like Al Capone got caught for tax evasion. A lot of criminals get caught in the first instance because they were violating traffic laws, and then the patrolman stops them, and lo and behold, turns out there are some more serious criminal violations going on. So, if you want the citizens to be safe from criminals, pretty much everything Mary Moriarty has done is inexplicable.
So how do we get to a point, and I guess I don't understand people in Minneapolis, do you get a sense that there's going to be an uprising in this? And what I mean by that, they had 3 mass shootings in the last 3 weeks in Minneapolis, and the third one didn't make the front page of the paper anymore. It's like, another one happened. We got the Moriarty thing. Then we'll talk about speeding and that sort of thing. Can it get so bad that the people in Minneapolis at some point will just say enough is enough?
I don't know, Al. The voting patterns, not just in Minneapolis, but in a lot of cities. Look at Chicago. You'd think with what's going on in that city, the voters would rise up and elect somebody different. I would if I lived in Chicago. Same with Minneapolis. Now, Mary Moriarty is not running for re-election. So whoever gets elected county attorney in Hennepin County is not going to be running on the kind of soft on crime platform that Moriarty did.
Yeah, it'll change. Sir, I appreciate you very much coming to the program. I do. I love the American Experiment, AmericanExperiment.org. That's where you're going to catch all the latest information, get all the polls and the rest. I appreciate you, my friend. Thanks for doing this.
Always great to be with you, Al.
He's John Hinderaker.
Think about it. Now that school's out for the summer, how are Minnesota students doing? Not very